Hello, hello, hello out there, future millionaires. We have a special guest on the show today. His name is Shane Thrapp. He's going to speak with us today about something that is very, very important. That would be mental health. Shane Thrapp is the founder of Creating Order from Chaos and an ADHD coach and business consultant. He works to empower people with ADHD to find their authentic selves and collaborates with companies on neurodivergent inclusivity and accommodations. He also works as the operations director at the nonprofit Men's ADHD Support Group as a thriving force furthering their mission of supporting men with ADHD. Shane Thrapp is the founder of Creating Order from Chaos and an ADHD coach
Actually,
as well.
I think it's duplicated there. Not
Oh,
sure
is it?
how.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I can edit that out.
Yeah.
All right. Um, so I would like to welcome Shane Thrapp. Am I saying the last name correctly?
You are saying it correctly. Good.
Okay.
Congratulations, because a lot of people for some reason get that real messed up, and I have no idea why.
Oh, you should hear my last name. Hear and see my last name. I understand. I understand. The creator of creating order from chaos. That name tells us that this is going to be a really good conversation. Welcome to the show, Shane.
Thank you for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem, man. Very, very interested in this subject. It's something that needs to be discussed, need to be talked about. So, my very first question would be, what is the definition of ADHD?
So, the definition of ADHD is a contentious one, actually, because the breakdown of it is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. The problem with that is we do not have an issue with attention nor a deficit of hyperactivity. No, we're the problem, with that is whenever we sit here and we look at ADHD, it's such a wildly encompassing issue that people deal with that since the DSM-5 came out, we have learned that it means many different things that people struggle with along a neurodevelopmental disorder. And what it really is, for the most part, is there's genetic components to it. There's different ways that the brain is actually designed to work that honestly just do not fit within the neurotypical standard of how a person is supposed to act and do things and stuff like that. And because we live in a neurotypical society designed for neurotypical people, there are a lot of unrealistic expectations that people have on how a person is supposed to act, and we don't fit into that mold very well. And so we tend to wind up having a lot of issues struggling with parents not really understanding us, school systems not really understanding us, and it is considered a disorder because we struggle with things that neurotypical people are able to do easily: time management, executive function, and a large number of different other issues that we have, like emotional dysregulation. And so that is the most basic definition that I give people, because I don't like the clinical definition of it.
Right. So, I'm wondering, is it when you mentioned school and you brought up school, I'm wondering this. I know a lot of other parents wonder the same thing when you just said clinical. Um, is it something that I would say teachers, principals, who's ever in charge of the school, is it has it gotten to the point where it's just a title and they put that title on some children that they cannot that won't behave or they can't control?
Not for the most part. There is enough diagnostic criteria out there to be able, for many people, many teachers, to have an understanding of what it means. And while some teachers, obviously, not, this is a generalization more than anything. Many teachers understand what it looks like and they can gauge it, but the people who make the determination are often school counselors, mental health professionals that work within the school system, and things of that nature. And it's a really bad form for teachers just to sit here and say, oh, you've got a little ADHD kid there. And, but the diagnostic criteria are fairly thorough. And, but it is still not very well understood by a lot of
Right.
people. We've gotten a lot better over the last 10 years. But like when I was younger, the way that they tested for ADHD was they would give you Ritalin. They'd say, here, if you get really hyper on this, you don't have ADHD. If you get really calm on this, you're good. And then it essentially just shove medication down your throat. And I'm not anti-medication. It's just it ignores the other issues that people with ADHD face, which requires a lot more therapy, a lot more tolerance, a lot more understanding, and a completely different mindset when it comes to parenting or teaching a child with ADHD.
Your coaching goes into career and relationships and other aspects of being a grown up. So other than a child, we speak about child because children, because that's I guess when you first diagnosed. But what if you miss that diagnostic and you're a grown up and you don't know why your life is going the way that it's going?
That's when you meet people like me. No, no, what we see, and for a long time, it was thought that ADHD was just a child disorder, that you eventually grow out of it. The thing is over the last 20 years, with the work of people like William Dodson and other pioneers of ADHD medication, ADHD science, and different things like Russell Barkley, we now understand that ADHD doesn't go away. It's a lifelong issue that you deal with because it's how our brains are actually designed, like I said earlier.
Right.
And what honestly starts happening is that at age 18 or so, people are aware enough that there's something that's going on with them, and they learn how to mask. And because they learned how to mask and they learn to fit into society, they often do not exhibit those symptoms until later on in life. And so they may have learned how to mask earlier on, especially if they are the 80% who deal with some sort of trauma. Masking is a trauma response. And masking is where you are literally taking these caricatures of what you think a person is supposed to be, and you're putting on the mask, and that's how you present yourself. And it's a very mentally taxing situation. And as you get older, though, just like bodybuilders and athletes and things like that, the longer that you're trying to hold up this burden, right? The longer you're trying to bench press, the longer, like, it eventually starts breaking down. And then we see people who are in their 30s, their 40s, who are dealing with, multiple divorces. They've bounced from job to job. They have issues with the relationships. They are struggling with work from whenever they used to be doing something that they were really successful at, but then they get their job shifted and now they're struggling to do just basic time management. And this is kind of turned over an understanding that, oh crap, people with ADHD live with this for the rest of their lives, and we've been underserving a large number of people by sitting here assuming that after 18 it goes away. What actually happens after 18 is they wind up in college, or they wind up going into the workforce, and they struggle constantly, and they don't have an outlet, and so they start developing things like addiction issues, mental health problems. They start to wind up in jail, right? Like I think there's a study out there that says 75% of people who are in jail who have high recidivism rates. Oh man, that's a word. Um, uh, have some sort of neurodivergence, ADHD, autism, or something along those lines. And it was originally also thought that it was kind of a white kid problem. Well, now we know that people of any race roughly all have the same number of people, percentage statistic wise, of who have ADHD. And the difference is people of color do not have as much access to mental health care as children. People of color do not have access to being able to have the support networks that suburban white people did or do. And so a lot of that got shoved underneath the rug. And, that kid's just a badass, right? He's just going to, he's not going to do what he's supposed to do. He's not listening. Obviously, his father's gone, or whatever stereotype people feel like putting out there about what the actual issue is. They completely ignore the fact that it may be a fact of neurodivergence. And over time, these issues turn into, like I said earlier, addiction, or they turn into mental health problems like depression. People with ADHD are, especially men, are 34% more likely to have suicidal ideation. Of that, they are also 3 times more likely to actually follow through with suicide if they are compared to neurotypicals of the same age. And it has become very well understood that ADHD needs to be taken a lot more seriously, and autism needs to be taken a lot more seriously, and we need to be having a lot more tools in place to both diagnose it early on, manage it effectively early on, and not just shoving pills down a child's throat, and then developing systems in our education system and educating parents and the workforce on how to help people who have ADHD throughout their lives.
Got it. Got it. I 100% agree with you based on my life alone. I can tell you from grade school, the kids that acted out, and I wouldn't say just was bad. They, maybe just in my eyes, the teacher didn't really know how to teach them or handle them or whatever. But they was definitely diagnosed with an ADHD of some sort. But of course, went to school with them in grade school. But now they're grown and they're functioning. So I'm really like, were they misdiagnosed, or was that just something, or that they got together? Maybe. On the flip side of that, I've been to jail quite a few times, and it's more of a mental health problem than it is. Once you get in there, you're like, man, they should have like rehabilitation centers, because this is a mental health issue. It's not just a criminal issue. And you can see that it's plain as day.
Yeah.
So,
One of the hallmarks
yeah,
of ADHD is actually a thing called emotional dysregulation. We feel things more. We feel all emotions more. Like, that includes trauma. That includes rejection. That includes anger, rage. That includes so many different things. And when we do not have outlets, healthy outlets, to be able to manage those emotions effectively, if we've never been taught how to manage those emotions effectively, if we've had role models in our lives that thought violence was the answer, you're going to see that more and more in the prison system. And the issues that a lot of people deal with when it comes to emotional dysregulation is combined with the impulsivity that we have a lack of, or that we have too much of. There's these times when we seem to do things in such a quick moment that winds up having us getting into the criminal system, winds up having us being abusers, right? Emotionally, mentally, physically abusing, our partners or the people around us. There's moments where we've lost control of ourselves and wind up in these horrifyingly depressing funks. I just tried cocaine one time, and all of a sudden, for some reason, I can't get away from it. And because we feel things more. So when we put a drug in our system, we're like, oh, this is great. And
Right.
we start having we start having all the happy juices run through our brains, and we've starved ourselves for so long that when we have that happy feeling, we want more and more of it. And of course, add on top of the fact of the addictive properties of drugs, then we wind up having that issue. And we will then do whatever it takes to have that. And all of a sudden, hey, that house looks really good. I bet you, I can just get in there and get out. And we make stupid decisions, and we find ourselves really struggling, and then the flip side of it, we start doing things at work, or we start struggling with a boss who's just an asshole, and we pop off and say something stupid to them. Or we have an employee who's just a dirt bag, and we get mad at them, or we just become so socially exhausted from masking for so long that we take the mask off, and then all of a sudden people are like, why can't you do anything basic? Like, my dad's favorite term for me was like, what, you're the dumbest smart kid I've ever known. And we don't think that there's any resources out there. We don't know that we have ADHD. I didn't find out I had ADHD until I was in my upper 30s. I didn't find out I had autistic tendencies, that I was on an autism spectrum until I was 36.
Mm.
And like the first 3 psychiatrists that I went to figure out what I dealt with, they prescribed, or they diagnosed me with depression, bipolar, and the first one just told me that ADHD doesn't exist in adults. And their methodology was to put me on SSRIs. And SSRIs are horrifying for people with ADHD or autism. And I actually became suicidal. I had issues with suicidal ideation on them. And it's a struggle. Like, again, we feel things more. So like, whenever we're trying to find a psychiatrist who believes us, or if we're trying to find a way through the thing, when we're trying to find a doctor, it's overwhelming to see, like, who do I talk to? Right? When we're trying to find help, when we're trying to figure out what's going on, if we don't know, there's so much hopelessness in the feelings that we have when it comes to actually getting treated, that we just stop, and we stop trying, and we get on weed and alcohol and cocaine and heroin, and like, I feel I can at least numb the issues that I'm dealing with if I'm on
Yeah.
those. So yeah,
Self-medication.
self-medication.
Yep. Shane, I'm gonna put you on hold. I'm gonna have to edit this part too. But my charger. I need my charger.
Go for it. Go for it. I
Uh,
got you.
okay.
Right.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right.
Good time for a commercial break, anyways.
That, that's right. Okay, let me get to your website. Okay, so welcome to Creating Order from Chaos. Can you tell us a little bit about the services that you offer?
Yeah, I'm an ADHD life coach primarily, and life is what I help people with. So that means relationships, careers, anything along those lines. Parenting, I help parents with children who have ADHD, because a lot of parents who have children with ADHD also have ADHD themselves, uh, because we know it's genetic. And what I do is I kind of break down understanding how to start learning how to accept who you are, because that's the big thing about ADHD is understanding how it affects you. And because this is a lifelong issue that we deal with, a lot of my time is spent working with mindset change and developing an understanding of your strengths, what your values are, and understanding what your weaknesses are. Because what we have to start getting into is starting to celebrate those strengths that you have and develop the external tools that we have to manage our ADHD effectively, and stop worrying so much about those weaknesses that we have, which honestly runs counter to a lot of gurus out there, by the way. They're like, oh, you should always improve your weaknesses. Yeah, we should, for those that really is something that we need to worry about. But I'm horrible at finances. Like, it's a huge weakness of mine. Why can't I just give that to a finance person? Here's my taxes, bookkeeper. You take care of that. Why should I worry about that stuff?
Yeah.
But a lot of times people with ADHD, because we do not feel like we can ask for help, especially men, we tend to try to do so much on our own. And we may not be good at those things, and they may not be important for us to be good at. And so we focus on all that stuff and it becomes overwhelming. Even though we know that 300% of people with, even when we know that people with ADHD are 300% more likely to develop their own businesses, we still struggle, because once we create that business, if we do not understand our strengths and our values and our weaknesses, we take too much on ourselves. And so then the businesses wind up failing because we get overwhelmed and we get burnt out. We also tend to compare ourselves to others, right? This person's super famous and a billionaire. Why can't I be like that person? And so we don't celebrate the successes that we have, which then makes us feel like we're not, really doing that well, even if we are much more successful than than other people who are in similar positions to us. But they're too busy looking at people like Richard Branson or Elon Musk and other millionaires and billionaires who have been able to get through ADHD and do that. They ignore the fact that some of those people had access to resources that they don't have access to. And they also look at these people and are like, well, they did it on their own. No, the fuck they didn't. Sorry. Like, I need y'all to understand something. The most effective way to manage your ADHD is to stop worrying about other people and stop worrying about doing things that you're not good at, and learn how to delegate. And that's what I teach people. There are times when you need to delegate things off of you and give it to other people who are good at it, so that you can focus on what you are good at. And I'll go back to Richard Branson, for example. He was a 17-year-old dropout, dropped out of high school, the whole 9 yards. And then when he got into where he started developing his own business, he would focus on what he was good at and hire people in who did the drudge work that he didn't want to do, and hand that work off to people. And when he got tired of doing the business, he would hand a business off to people and then go on about his business, creating another thing. And a lot of people, especially in the entrepreneurial world, is the ruling, the prevailing term out there is like, be consistent and stay in your niche. That doesn't work for people with ADHD, because we get tired, we get bored with it. Like, I have hit the pinnacle of what I need to do at this one, and I want to do something else. So what I teach people whenever it comes to careers is understanding that you may be at your job, the thing that you're doing, the business you're developing, for 1 to 3 years. And that's your normal, right? We don't do 20-year jobs. We don't do, jobs where we're doing the same thing repetitively over and over again. We have to have aspects of creativity. One of the terms that are out there is called INCUP, INCUP, interesting novel challenges that have urgency and follow our passions. That's it. That's the motivation for people with ADHD, is to find those passions that we love and that we consistently stay with, and then figure out, how do I make this my career? Or how do I incorporate this into my career in what I'm doing? This is why we create businesses because we get so sick and tired of working with other people who don't see the vision that we have, or we see a problem and how to solve it that apparently nobody else seems to be able to get. And so we develop those businesses, but then eventually we get tired of doing that. But many of us haven't put in place the infrastructure needed to be able to hand that off, or have the knowledge to know I need to hand this off. And that's kind of what I help people understand. And that's part of my business development. The other side of the coin is working with companies on how to help people who are neurodivergent have access to the accommodations and the resources that they need in order to be successful, which then means that I do public speaking and engage with them and educate these neurotypical people or other people who need to understand this, who may not know that they're neurodivergent, that certain work accommodations need to be put in place. There's like sensitivities that people with autism have to certain lights or textures, or not being, needing to have access to going outdoors and being able to change your workspace up on a regular basis, or work from home on a more regular basis. There's different accommodations that people need. And so I help companies develop those business practices that allow for that within their budget that they have, and then kind of educate them on understanding that long meetings probably not going to be that productive for us, because we don't have a working memory that works as well as other people's, and expecting us to be able to pay attention in long meetings is a kind of a lost cause. Give it to us in written format, or give it to us in a shorter format, or a video format, or audio format that we can kind of break down and read through and have a gist of it. And it's just kind of a lot of education is what I do, is just helping people understand ADHD, finding acceptance for who they are and how they are, and developing those strengths, those values, and understanding those weaknesses that they have, and how to kind of start moving away from focusing so much on all the failures, and understanding that we have to learn from those failures. And that's the biggest aspect, is learning from failure instead of making such a huge deal out of failure as if it's some personal failing, instead of the learning opportunity that it is.
Okay. I get it. That's I've heard of a lot of coaches. There's a lot of coaches out here. There's a lot of consultants. But what you just described, I've never heard of anyone doing it, but see that where that's needed, and the importance of it, for businesses, for corporations, to not have as much turnover, to not have as much churn, um, for people to be comfortable and happy with their jobs. I see
Mm-hmm.
how that helps.
And here's the other way that a lot of people don't really understand that is beneficial, right? A company can prepare for turnover and churn if they know that certain people are going to need to be shifted into roles, or they may wind up finding different jobs or things like that, if they understand that the person has ADHD or a neurodivergent of some sort. They understand that that person is going to need to be shifted into a different role, so they can plan for that better. And one of the biggest things that I actually had to help a company understand was, when you're doing your interview process, or when you see on the hiring paperwork that that person has marked that they have ADHD, you need to be planning that kind of stuff out, so that when the person starts showing a lot of issues with the work that they're doing, instead of villainizing them, talking to them and saying, hey, how bored are you? I'm bored out of my mind. All right, cool. Do you want to talk about another role that might fit you a little bit better?
Mm-hmm.
Now we're taking this person who's probably an expert in what they were doing and utilizing their skills in other ways, where they can start to have a more well-rounded understanding of the company. And they're going to often have natural leadership skills that can be utilized in different ways when you start focusing on their strengths and not necessarily on their work performance when they're bored.
Right. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a whole hell of a lot of sense. If I've gone back to childhood and being in a classroom to where there's kids that have already either finished their work, but now they're getting in trouble because they've already finished their work and all they are is bored. But they have to wait for the other kids to catch up and they're already done. So I've had I've had teachers in meetings tell me that my son, but I guess they do have different classes and things like that. Like you say, you're progressing a little faster. But if jobs were able to recognize that, you're right, man. That's better than firing someone or someone being so bored that now they're making concessions to say, hey, the generation, what is it, Z or the millennials, forget them. They only going to be on the job 3 or 4 years. But not to accommodate them, just to go ahead and say, we're not going to keep their attention. We're not even going to try. They're only going to be here 3 or 4 years, and that's just going to be the norm.
And it's important to understand that for a lot of people, and we are starting to see a resurgence in people being open about their ADHD, which is why we are seeing a lot more people talking about it. It's not because more people have ADHD, it's because fewer people are hiding that they have ADHD,
right,
or hiding that they have autistic tendencies. And the younger generations are starting to be more comfortable in being who they are.
Yeah.
One of the biggest realizations for me was when I first started out as a project manager, I had the mindset that I was supposed to go into a company and work there for years. And I had a boss of mine call me in office and he's like, hey, how bored are you? And I was like, I don't know if this is a trick question or not. He goes, no, I need you to be honest with me. And I was like, I'm bored out of my fucking gourd. He goes, okay, cool. You're fired. And I was like, what? He was like, that's your option. Like, I'm either going to fire you or you need to find something else within the role that you're doing that is more entertaining. Because right now I can tell you're bored out of your mind and you're not really putting a whole lot of effort into this. And I'm like, I'm not. He's like, how fast did it take you to learn the that part of the company? I said, a month and a half. He's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah. It took me a month and a half to learn all of the different policies, procedures, technologies, everything that we had in that thing. He's like, how long did it take you to actually finish the project? Oh, 6 weeks after that. You've been here for 8 months. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you here, man. I work fast. And he's like,
next?
okay. Yeah, I was like, I told you like 2 months ago that I was ready to find something else. And he was like, you did. And I didn't. All right, walk me through it. Like, what is your process? And I walked it through him. I said, I am here. I create the process. I develop the process. I train people how to run the process, and I'll walk the fuck away. He's like, but you're supposed to finish the project. I was like, yeah, cool. I'm horrible at finishing. And that was the wake up moment for me. That was the wake up moment for me because I was like, wait, I don't finish things. Why do I need to finish things? And that turned into my career. That turned into what catalyzed me to find the work that I was good at and focus on that and really make something of it. And so I started going to headhunters and I started going to other people and I developed my own branding. And I started saying, all right, here's what I got. I got 3 to 8 months. This is what you can do with me. I said, I will develop the project plan. I will create the entire system. I'll build your metrics out. I'll sit here and design the training program. I'll train people on how to do it. And then I'm going to walk away. And your people are going to be able to maintain it and manage it, move it forward.
Right.
And at first the headhunter was like, I don't know. I was like, look, I'm really good at this. Let me show you. And they're like, here, I'm handing her 5 different reference letters. I was like, look, I have an ability that allows me to go into a company, learn everything about it in 6 weeks or so, less so if it's just one part of the company. And I have the ability to find the people who are experts and I work with them and I develop a program and I develop the project and I work with a financial expert to build out the budget. And then I develop the entire process and I can do it in 6 weeks after that. And you can sell me to whoever you want. These are the fields these are the industries that I'd love to work for. And she had faith in me and she started doing it. And I started really excelling at doing that. And eventually I wound up working for Cisco on a $21 million project where we were redeveloping their entire tier 1 and tier 2 support system to use AI to answer more questions so that they didn't have to have humans doing all of the work. And then they could take those humans, retrain them on tier 3, tier 4 support and tier 5 in field support, and utilize their workforce more effectively. And I was one of the top project managers in that company at that point.
Yeah. So you used what you had, you recognized it and used it.
Yeah.
To benefit yourself and your lifestyle. I think that's the most important thing is lifestyle, I believe. Work balance is cool, you
Yeah.
know.
I wanted to be able to work 8 months out of the year, and I want to be able to take 4 months off because I needed rest. A lot of people don't understand how important rest is for productivity, right? I coach people to understand resting is part of productivity. You need at least 1 hour a day that you can fuck off and do whatever the hell you want. And you need 8 hours of sleep, 7 to 8 hours of sleep, depending on your age, right? If you're not getting those, you're not going to be productive. I don't care, you're not sustainably going to be productive. You may be able to handle it for a little while, especially if you're younger and things like that, but eventually your body's going to go, you know what? You need some rest. We're going to injure you. That's what happened to me in 2018. My body, I had a mental breakdown in 2016 from a family issue that happened, and I ignored it, and I kept trying to work, and I kept trying to work the same number of hours every week. And then eventually in 2018, I developed fibromyalgia, and my body shut down, and I wound up losing my job at Cisco. And I had to reframe my entire world because I ignored burnout and I ignored how overwhelmed I was. And I eventually wound up becoming a stay-at-home dad of twins. But I still wanted to help people. That was the thing for me. I wanted to help people. And I had been studying ADHD for so long at this point. I was literally an expert at this point. And I'd been helping a lot of my friends because, guess what? We congregate together, y'all. And I started helping my friends. And a friend of mine said, why don't you turn this into a business? And instead of letting my fear control me, I legitimately sat here and I said, you know what? Let me think about this for a second. And I worked with an ADHD coach friend of mine. And I said, okay, I want to develop this into a business. How does that work? And she was like, yeah, here, we're going to get you certified. Let's get you working with a company that I know of, and you're going to sit here and you're going to want to make sure that you're working with ADHD informed certification process, and then put yourself out there and find those people that you want to help. And for me, what I wanted to do was I built a business model that I understood would shift over time. At first, it was just one-on-one. Now I'm starting a group coaching, right? I also started branching out into working with corporations and small businesses to help with neurodevelopmental, or neurodivergent accommodations. I started doing more podcasting. Now I run a nonprofit called the Men's ADHD Support Group with an amazing team, including the founder, Mark Almodovar. And we are developing a nonprofit around giving men who are neurodivergent a space where they can be open about the issues that they have, the struggles that they have, and developing systems and things like that to put in place, and coaching them through all of this different things through weekly peer-to-peer support systems, a podcast, a great website with blogs, and really developing that. And also now we've started branching out into in-person events where we are, developing in-person facilitated meetups for people to just kind of find friendships and develop relationships and understanding and being able to share the issues that they have, and have people who are supporting them in a loving, respectful, honest, accountability kind of mindset, and not ridiculing each other, or not, tough love and, buck up and pull them bootstraps up kind of mindset, but more of a, hey, we're here for you. Talk. This is a safe place. Let's talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's really turned into something really amazing. And now me and the other members of the board of directors are actually going to be speaking at the International ADHD Convention here in Baltimore in a couple weeks.
Okay. Man, that sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. A place that men can go and speak without being ridiculed. That sounds amazing. Um, because it's for men and because it is just, I guess, mentioning ADHD and like you said, people are the younger generation. They are more open with who they are. They are, you know, they're going to take their mental health breaks. They don't care. They're like, hey, listen, I'm not coming into work. But have you ran into any issue where you've had to, with building all of this, had to dress ADHD up? Have you had to sexify it just so you could get it, um, I guess, branded differently, just so more people would be comfortable with, you know, it? Or are you just sticking with, hey, listen, these are the people, this is the community, ADHD is, what it is?
More of the latter more than anything, but we are definitely people who understand that ADHD is more of a neurotype than it is a disorder.
Right.
The struggle with ADHD isn't necessarily with the ADHD itself, because when we see children who have early intervention put in place, therapy, the parents are taught on how to manage effectively the child to give them the structure and the support that they need, positive parenting techniques. We see often those children thriving, especially if the education system is well informed and things along those lines. And the problem is not enough communities and not enough school systems are taking the time to do that. And I'll give you an example. My children were born at 27 weeks, my twin toddlers. When they were born, because they were born at 27 weeks, we had access to occupational therapists, speech therapists from the get. And those therapists spent more time with us at first on what to expect, how to put in place positive parenting techniques, what kind of neurodevelopmental or physical milestones that we should expect. And it's going to be a little bit delayed because these children are very, very premature. So there's a higher risk for them to having some neurodevelopmental disorder or physical issue. My daughter has a mild cerebral palsy diagnosis. And they spent so much time teaching us how to parent in a positive and loving manner that it showed the children how to communicate more effectively, how to deal with the stronger emotions that they may have, how to effectively communicate with through different methodologies. So children with, any child can learn like sign language very early on. Children can learn to identify pictures of things that they want very early on. And so when you're teaching the child from birth to point at a picture of a bottle, if they want a bottle, at 9 months, they start pointing at that picture. Please. Or, when you're sitting here saying, more, eat, please. They're able to sit here and understand these kind of things because they have a better understanding of their body, like when it comes to that kind of language, instead of having to figure out how to use the vocal cords to sound out the word. And it's a different part of their brain that they're having to use. When we see people given access to those kind of resources, we see those children thriving. This isn't an isolated thing. We see this across the board in any kind of metric. Children thrive. When we see teachers who understand that a child who has any kind of ADHD or autism is 2 to 4 years behind their peers, and so they adjust their expectations of that child in those different ways, then they start seeing the child, once they start kind of catching up with the rest of the students in other ways, thriving. Right? And that's the thing about ADHD. A child who is 6 has a social or cognitive or emotional or behavioral mindset of a child that's 4 or even 3. Right? So they're going to have hyperactivity out of the roof. They're going to have impulsivity issues out of the roof. They're going to be bored out of their minds easier, because that's what a 4-year-old would have. That's what a 3-year-old would have. This doesn't make them stupid. It makes them slightly cognitively behind the norm. And instead of vilifying that child or talking about how that child's a little badass or really making sure that the child really feels like they should feel shame for who they are and how they are. We don't do that. We sit here and we start building them up and recognizing where they are at the level that they're at, recognizing their strengths, teaching them how to learn from failures, and really allowing themselves to be who they are. And then we see those people thrive. The same thing is applicable for adults. Once you break down all of those issues that they face as kids, I literally take my people back to their childhood, and then I rebuild them throughout the years until they can start to learn how to accept who they are and learn how to be the people that they authentically should be based on themselves, not the social stereotypes, not the cultural expectations, but authentically who they are. And that's where we see the transformation change. That's where we see them truly start to become who they are. And while they may not be a millionaire or a billionaire or anything like that, but they do start to thrive. They do start to understand that ADHD, emotional dysregulation, doesn't just mean anger, rage, sad, depression. It also means joy, love, happiness, success. And they start to have faith in themselves. And then they start to shine. Not because they have superpowers. That's the stupid thing that people say. It's because they have different powers. They think differently. They see problems differently. They see solutions differently. And they process things in a different way that neurotypical people don't understand. And so when we're talking about the men's ADHD support group, what we're getting them to understand is you think differently, and that's okay. We want you to understand that it's okay. What we've got to do is teach people how you think and how you process and what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and be okay with that.
Yeah, that's profound, because, and it's just making sense to me today, is the fact that you said, of course, work on your strengths more so than your weaknesses. But if you knew that the way that your brain worked, a person, I'm saying anyone, if they knew that the way that their brain worked was that they don't complete anything, but it's not their fault. Like most people that would do that would probably end up looking at themselves, downing themselves. Oh man, I'm not going to complete it, whatever course I take, whatever it is I do. But if you knew that that's the way that if you was diagnosed with something and that's just who you are, that's like a load being taken off, because you would know what to do at that point.
Yeah, you
And you
hire
can
people to
just
finish your stuff.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I do want to kind of take a little step back there real quick. Whenever it comes to learning things, like getting into coursework, going to college, high school, middle school, the thing that we have to understand there is there's going to be strengths that a child has in certain subjects, right? Mine was reading. I did not understand that reading was this thing where certain people could only read a sentence at a time, or even a word at a time, or 3 or 4 words at a time, because I read a paragraph at a time, right? And so I would go into class, and if it was any class that had essentially a textbook, I read the textbooks in 6 weeks, all of them. And then I would go into the class, and since the teachers didn't challenge us outside of the textbook, I had an eidetic memory for the textbook. I could sit here and name off all the different things. And so the teachers were like, what is this shit? And I'd be like, I'm bored. And they're like, okay, well, we'll put you in advanced classes for everything. All right, cool. The teacher still taught out of the textbook. They just accelerated everything. And I'm like, oh, I'm still bored. But the problem was mathematics doesn't teach out of a textbook like that.
Yeah.
Sure, I mean, it breaks it all down into textbook and everything, but the practical application of mathematics doesn't work that way.
Right.
So the second we got out of basic mathematics and into something like pre-algebra or things like that, I failed miserably. And then the teachers invalidated everything I was good at because I wasn't good at math. Destroyed me. Destroyed my entire love of education. And so many students have the things that they're really good at, completely invalidated by any failing that they have.
Yeah.
Think of the artists in your life. Think of those people who love doing different creative things in their life. Think of those who wanted to be in theater, or they wanted to sing, or they wanted to paint, but everybody sat here and said there's no value to that. There's no productivity to that. And you're good at that, sure, that's awesome, but we need you to be these little automatons that go into the corporate world and be ready to do that stuff.
Right.
Think of it. I mean, you're of the same generation as me.
Yeah.
How many of us had all of our creativity completely crushed because they wanted us to be these automatons that worked in the corporate world, or in the manufacturing world, or out, on the farms, or things of that nature?
Yeah, definitely. That's another thing I absolutely love about this new generation is they are following their goals and dreams and being creative, and they're able to be themselves. And and it's funny to look at because it's almost like um, you know, times when it was bartering instead of money. Now these kids can do something creative in exchange for something else. Um, I mean, it's a great thing to see because they took that from us. We didn't have that at all.
I actually love that, because that's actually a business model that I actually work within a large group of other people who have started developing that business model of, I'll do coaching for you if you help me with finance, or if you help me edit my podcast. And the not feeling the shame and the guilt for essentially bartering with another person for services. That, I love podcasting. I love being on shows like this. The reason why I do shows like this is because I don't want to fucking edit it. I don't want to do my own podcast. Now, ironically enough, I actually do have a podcast now with the men's ADHD support group that I edit. But for the most part, I've really developed a network of people where we trade services together, and we work
Right.
together, and we hold each other accountable. And it's part of my group coaching, is essentially having accountability groups where we get together on Mondays and we get together on Fridays. And on Mondays, we sit here and we talk about, here's what I want to accomplish this week. Here's the struggles I'm having. And the people who have that expertise start giving advice. And they're like, hey, message me if you need help with this.
Yeah.
And at the end, and at the end of the week, the people get together and we say, hey, how'd y'all do? And we celebrate those wins. We celebrate the positives, and we talk about, okay, what did you struggle with? I'm struggling with this. All right, cool. Hey, this weekend, let's get together and see what that looks like. Right. I have a person who's helping me build a community, right? Because she's an expert in community, and she works with people like Pat Flynn, who are huge names in the industry, and she has that expertise. I don't have it. So she's helping me with it. She charges people $10,000 a fucking contract for this kind of work, but she's doing it with me because I'm coaching her in ADHD and helping her with her son.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that value is there. And so it took me forever to learn that process, that it was okay to ask people for help. There it is.
Definitely, man. It's awesome. It's an awesome time that you can actually follow your passion, do what it is that you do, connect with somebody on a podcast, and say, hey, man, you good at that? I'm good at this. Hey, listen, we can jump back on a Zoom call and, and do this live. I mean, it's awesome to me, man. And for anyone with ADHD, I'm pretty sure that it is how you describe it. It's the best thing that's ever happened, especially for Generation X, because I mean, we were in a cubicle. We had to be in a cubicle or in a warehouse. So you can't be creative there. You can't be too passionate there. So this
Yeah.
gives, people an outlet. My wife tells me all the time I have ADHD, and she's probably right. I should probably go get that looked at. But
And that's the thing. I have seen thousands of people that once they actually understand that they actually have ADHD, there's a grief process there, right? There's a grief, like, oh my God, I made all these mistakes. If I had only known I had ADHD. Yes, but now,
yeah,
let's start managing it.
Yeah.
There's tools, there's resources, there's medication for those who need it. There's, getting into exercise, understanding the importance of eating better, understanding the importance of mindfulness and meditation, understanding the importance of accepting and self-love and relaxation and resting, understanding all of these different things that you can put in place that now and then you can manage.
Yeah.
And
I see that now.
and it's important, especially at our age, to have that understanding, because we live with too much shame, too much guilt, too much fear, too much, all of these different negative emotions, because we forgot how to feel the positive.
Yeah.
And when you have ADHD, it's not an excuse. And I hate it when people sit here and say, oh, ADHD is an excuse. No, it is a reason. And it is a reason that people need to understand and they need to respect. Because just like you're not going to sit here and tell the paraplegic kid in the wheelchair to get up and run a fucking 400, you should not be telling a person with ADHD, just do it, because they don't have the capability of just doing it. There is literally a mental block in their brains that prevents them from just doing those things. They may even be experts in how to do it, but not have the click in their brain that goes, okay, do it.
Right.
At least until they manage it, learn how to do it, and have a good support system of people around them who are helping them thrive and helping them understand that they're worthy and that they're valued and loved.
I got it, man. This is a very, very insightful, very insightful for me. It's very insightful conversation. Um, with you being an expert, I'm gonna call you an expert
Oh, I am. I own
at the
that shit.
topic. So, relationship is something that you speak about.
Mhm.
Is this something that same boredom that you say that someone with HD experiences at a career and a job? Do they experience that same boredom in a relationship? Jump around relationships, like
Yeah.
live a playboy lifestyle? How does that pan out for someone with ADHD for the most part?
We feel things more. I'm always going to go back to that. Emotional dysregulation is one of the central things. So we feel love more, we feel boredom more. And if we are with a person who does not really understand who we are and is not willing to grow with us and adapt with us and change with us, we're going to get bored. And if we get bored, then we're going to stop caring so much. We're going to stop trying, especially if we don't feel like the other person is trying with us.
Right.
And the other thing is we actually have to understand that the relationship dynamic, the thought of what a relationship, a healthy relationship, a successful relationship is, has to change as well. A successful relationship isn't a relationship that lasts for 20 years or 30 years or 50 years. A successful relationship is one where at the end of the time that y'all are together, y'all both walk away better people.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's a one-night stand, or if it's 60 years from now, great.
Hot down.
You need to change your dynamic of what you think of a relationship is, because what you should be having in a relationship is love. You should cherish each other. You should be able to communicate effectively together. You should be able to be honest with each other. You should be able to be that person's rock and foundation for each other, so that when one of you is down, the other is able to step up. And when both of you are down, y'all can sit here and say, fuck it, let's Netflix and chill. Because y'all don't need to hold yourselves up to this ideal of 50-50 or 1-1 or anything like that, because people aren't like that, especially neurodivergent people. And whenever you start really changing the dynamic of what a successful relationship is, what you find is whenever you get to a point where this person's not moving with me, we've moved apart, which happens. Think of the 18-year-old who's married at 18 and then who they are at 28. You're drastically different people at that point. If the person you married at 18 doesn't change with you, y'all have grown apart. What do you do there? Most people try to stick it out. But the problem with that is if you try to stick it out and y'all are too far apart and you're not willing to meet in the middle and find a compromise and communication and the love and the things that y'all enjoyed, then y'all start getting really bitter. And if there's kids involved, holy shit, right? Because now you feel trapped. And so that bitterness and that angriness and all of those different emotional issues, especially for people with ADHD or other emotional dysregulation issues, depression, PTSD, or anything like that, it starts festering. And eventually it explodes. And now you hate each other.
Mm.
If you're taking a couple of steps back and recognize that the relationship dynamic needs to change, or there's issues in a relationship and you go to relationship therapy or counseling or coaching, hey y'all, if you do that, you can actually start communicating effectively. And if you have a good relationship person, they're going to recognize, hey guys, I need to be honest with y'all, I think the relationship is done. This is painful. Yes, it is still painful. It is massively painful. Yes. However, instead of having a year or 2 years or 5 years of disgusting anger and bitterness and rage and having traumatized your kids because both of y'all are just shitty and pissed off at each other, instead of that, you've got a short time of recognizing that something passed away. And now we've got to go through the grieving process, and we've got to make sure we're giving our kids the healthy environment that they need that may look like co-parenting and stuff like that. It's much easier to heal there than it is over time where y'all have been horrifying to each other or been abusive towards each other or things of that nature.
Right.
And I had a guy, a psychiatrist actually, a parenting specialist, challenge me. He goes, divorce is so traumatic for children. I'm like, you're absolutely right. In the short term, what's more traumatic for children is living in a household that's broken for X number of years, especially if there was a divorce and there's angry feelings and all that disgusting abuse behaviors and stuff like that. It's worse for them there because now instead of just a short-term PTSD, they've developed complex PTSD and other mental health issues that take significantly longer to heal from, if ever.
Yeah. Yeah. They have their own messed up relationship later on in life.
And generational trauma follows generational trauma follows generational trauma because you learned that mothers and fathers are supposed, every now and then they start hating each other, and that's a normal relationship. Or you've learned that it's okay to hit your wife, or it's okay to beat your husband or abuse your husband. It's okay to do that because my dad did that.
Yeah. Or you learn that it's okay to get a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Like I heard so many people say that, don't marry someone whose parents have been divorced because that's something they think is okay.
The thing
So
is, it's okay to get a divorce. I'm going to challenge you on this one, brother. It's okay to get a divorce, right? You shouldn't stay with a person just because you're with them. Now, should you try to get relationship coaching and therapy? Sure, 100%. Should you try to work through the issues that you're dealing with? Yes, 100%. But at some point, there also needs to be an understanding that maybe it's more healthier to be apart from each other and heal, because we can't heal another person. We have to heal ourselves first, and then have them move forward. Maybe the relationship comes back together once y'all both healed.
yeah.
Maybe it doesn't, but maybe you can at least be friendlier towards each other and be better parents if you've got children involved.
Sure.
And that's a really important distinction that I just wanted to challenge you with on that one real quick. Hope you don't mind.
No, don't mind at all. Shane, I don't know if it's mine or yours. Can you
I'm
check your
blurry.
camera?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on really, actually.
Oh man. All right, because this is going on YouTube and I want to make sure it's right. So let's do this. I mean, it's going on YouTube and the podcast.
There we
There
go.
you go. There you
All
go.
right.
Okay.
Sorry, y'all. I just kind of phased out there. That was because I was preaching a gospel, and y'all just saw the angel come out of me.
That was yeah. um, I think the same way that a child sees someone, or parents fighting, that, the same way that I come from the Bible Belt. I come from the South. My
Yep.
grandmother and them stayed together. My mother and father stayed together, and and I just personally believe that if you see a divorce and you see a marriage not making it, you can make up in your mind as a child, well, I always have that in my back pocket. I can always divorce like my parents did. So that's just something that I think a child, just like they see everything else, there's something else that they can see. Um, Not that it doesn't work, the other way
Right.
as well.
But and I grew up same area. I'm Northeast Texas country, born and bred on a farm 40 miles from the nearest town. Right.
Okay.
So I get it. And and but here's where I'd rather see my child. I'd rather see my child see their parents struggling every now and then, because it's going to happen, learning how to communicate effectively together, because that's important, seeing that they are, building things and working together and loving each other and things along those lines. And God forbid, if anything ever happens between me and my current wife, I want them to see us separating and finding our own way forward and giving them the same kind of loving treatment that they deserve, and still being able to communicate effectively and be good friends, maybe not friends, but at least friendly
Yeah.
to each other, rather than what happened with me and my ex-wife, which was this horrifying, destructive breakup and emotional trauma that we then instilled in my first two children, that caused me to be estranged for them up until just recently.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I want them to see is a healthy relationship with a healthy separation if that's needed, that then they can move into life with the understanding that I can sit here and have these relationships that are built on love, trust, communication. Here's how to do it. Here's how my boundaries work. Here's who I want to be with. Here's who I am authentically, and finding those people who they can grow old with, instead of being with people who they get stuck with because they had a baby at 18.
Yeah.
I want my kids to, hell, I don't even want my kids getting married until they're 25, 28. I want them to have fun. I want them to sow their wild oats and do the wild things and get all that stuff out of their system before
I
they get
know it,
all
right?
into it.
I agree. I agree with you. Go hiking in one of those countries or something. Don't just Yeah, I agree with you, man.
Yeah.
Well, Shane, I've had fun, man. I gotta do some self-reflecting now. I thought it was all because I was a Leo. So that's been my excuse all this time. But so tell the audience where they can find you, your website, social media handles. How do they get in touch with you?
So if you're interested in coaching, group coaching, or if you run a business and you want to understand how to help and understand the neurodivergent people that you work with, you can find me at creatingorderfromchaos.com. And if you're looking for me on social media, same thing, Creating Order from Chaos Consulting. If you've got a man in your life, or if you are a man and you feel like you have ADHD and you want to find a support group, look us up on Facebook. We've got an amazing Facebook group, 16K members. And we've got in-person events. We've got different types of weekly get-togethers. We've got a Discord chat server where you can be in a community of people kind of building you up. And, anywhere where you see men's ADHD support group, that's where we're at. And I have all of those social medias. So yeah, creatingorderfromchaos.com is my personal brand. Meeting a men's ADHD support group is the nonprofit that I help run.
All right, Shane. Um, Anyone listening to this podcast, take a second look at your life. See what's wrong, no matter whether it's, see what's wrong and see what's right, no matter if it may be ADHD, check out the negative, check out the positive, make you a blueprint, management, game plan. That's all that Shane talked about today, is just kind of making a better self, just checking in with yourself and checking in with your mental health. Shane, I want to thank you for coming on. This was a profound podcast. I learned a lot. I kind of came on here. That's why the first question I asked you was, what is ADHD? So we could get that out the way. And, because I know that people are kind of confused about it. It's like a title, you know what I'm saying? And they would just put that title and jokingly put it on someone. So we got through that today, and you did the job as an expert.
I had a lot of fun. It was great talking to you, man.
All right, man. I'll circle back and we'll talk again soon.
Definitely, dude. Anytime.
Okay, man. Much success from here on out.